Alright, YouTube. I mentioned before in the past that I'm a huge Buck Sexton fan. I listen to a lot of political radio. I also listen to a lot of audiobooks. And Buck Sexton is my favorite conservative talk show radio host. He is really articulate and really calm, really phlegmatic in his articulation with his monologues. And I'm going to play, first, I want to play his opening monologue. Then I want to play a conversation he has with a hostile caller that calls in. Now, with Buck Sexton, if you never listen to him, he really never raises his voice. I mean, he's someone you can actually have a beer with and talk bullshit about politics all day. He just seems like a cool guy. So it's really weird to see him get upset. And this caller, I'll play it soon, but I want to play the first monologue. I'm gonna put it on 1.5 times normal speed. Like I said, I listen to a lot of audiobooks and fiction, nonfiction stuff, politics. And there's only so many hours in the day, so I'm kind of used to listening to fast speed. Usually I do 2 times normal speed, but I'm gonna play it at 1.5 times normal speed. And I want to play the intro to it. I did a video similar to it the other day, and I don't agree with him on all of it, but I can see where he's coming from. It has to deal with the shooting, a DC shooting, and whether we should be blaming the left for it or not. I think eventually the Regressive Party will be dangerous enough that we can blame them. I don't think it's there yet. I think we can blame some people on the left who are influential and maybe cause this in some external way. But as of now, I don't think we can blame the Democratic Party as an ideology. But what Buck says here is really good. So I'm going to play it here, then I'm going to play the caller right after. So I urge you to listen.
And the New York Times writes the following. Was this attack evidence of how vicious American politics has become? Probably. In 2011, when Jared Lee Loughner opened fire in a supermarket parking lot, grievously wounding Representative Gabby Giffords and killing 6 people, including a 9-year-old girl, the link to political incitement was clear. Before the shooting, Sarah Palin's Political Action Committee circulated a map of targeted electoral districts that put Ms. Giffords and 19 other Democrats under stylized crosshairs. Conservatives and right-wing media were quick on Wednesday to demand forceful condemnations of hate speech and crimes by anti-Trump liberals. They're right. Though there's no sign of incitement, as direct as in the Giffords attack, liberals should of course hold themselves to the same standard of decency that they ask of the right. This is an abomination in words. First of all, Jared Loughner was obsessed with Giffords years before Sarah Palin published any map. The map merely had congressional districts with sites on them. Didn't have individuals. Had congressional districts, an inanimate thing. And there is zero proof of any kind that the shooter in the Giffords case saw the Sarah Palin map. And there's lots of proof that Jared Loughner was just truly, completely insane. You see, this is what the liberals don't want to get into. And, I have to say, some of my fellow conservatives yesterday were a little too much in Boy Scout mode on this one. I was disappointed to see that they didn't want to come out and talk about the broader environment. It's just the killer. It's just the person who pulls the trigger. Well, yeah, that person's responsible legally, morally. But there is a broader environment now that is toxic and that is creating a more fertile environment for the kind of action that we saw yesterday. That is just a fact. I mentioned Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and there are groups, they are identifiable, that use rhetoric. Black Lives Matter would never say anything about violence. Really? When they scream for dead cops, which I heard them doing myself. I saw them carrying signs blocks from my apartment in New York City about racist, murdering cops. If you really believe the cops are out there killing people because of the color of their skin, would you be morally wrong to take up arms in defense of your perceived group that is under siege? They say, Buck, well, it's just hyperbole. There's hyperbole and then there's incitement. At some point, it crosses a line. With Antifa saying that we are in the midst of fascism and that violence against those who speak in favor of Trump or conservatism or the Republican Party should be attacked. There is a moral exception to violence against people who have not been violent against you. Antifa, this group is saying it. There are hundreds, there are thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of them. That matters. When you have the media running with stories suggesting that Donald Trump is a traitor to the country, it is a capital crime, and you have the media insinuating that the President of the United States has committed treason. Some of them ask the question openly. Erin Burnett on CNN. Isn't this treason? That was her question. I'm just stating the facts. These are just facts. But yesterday it was, oh no, we're not going to play the game that they play on the left. We're not going to make this about more than just the shooter. Really? Maybe we should. I thought more about it after yesterday's show, and I was trying to be analytic, and I was trying to be honest, and I was trying to get to the truth of all this. And I think I should have been a little bit harsher even than I was. I talked about Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and those are just the groups that come to mind. mind. And a caller rightfully pointed out that the overall media narrative, too, is suggesting that our elected representatives in the Republican Party, well, most notably, of course, Donald Trump, is the head of some crime syndicate, and that he's an evil person, that he has seditious and traitorous instincts and has engaged in such behavior, that he could be the end of the world as we know it, and that is not an exaggeration, that his healthcare policy will kill people, they say, that his climate change, that withdrawing from the Paris climate change agreement will kill countless numbers of people. When you say that, there are consequences. This is not, hey, I think the marginal tax rate should be 37%. No, actually, it should be 25%. Well, let's look at the numbers. That's a political disagreement. This isn't, hey, I think that maybe we should tighten up our immigration system so that we're only taking people that add skills and that are self-sufficient, right? No, I just think we should take people for humanitarian reasons. Or even, no, I think we should take anybody who wants to come to this country. That's a political disagreement. Hey, you're supporting somebody that wants to destroy the country and the world, and people will die because of that person? People are dying. There's blood on your hands as a supporter of that person. That's not a political disagreement. That's an accusation, and that is incitement. And it's not coming from people who we expect to engage in exaggeration. It's not coming from people who don't have a following. It's not coming from anonymous avatars on Facebook or Twitter. It's coming from the biggest news stations and newspapers in the country, with one exception. Day in and day out, they are pushing this story. They are pushing this narrative. They want people to go to prison. They want lives to be ruined. They have been infected. This is a widespread sickness. It is a psychological ill, and they will not accept it. They will not confront it. They will not deal with it. We've come up with different ways to describe it. Trump derangement syndrome, or now Trumpophobia. But here we are, right after someone takes it upon himself to attack Republicans specifically because of their partisan affiliation. These are our fellow Americans, and they're representatives of this country, the federal government. Someone attacks them, tries to kill as many of them as possible. By a near miracle, we don't have a high death toll. Thank God we had some Capitol Police on the scene. Otherwise, as Rand Paul said, it would have been a killing field. It would have been a bloodbath. It would have been pinned down. Who knows how long it would have taken for police to get there. And he could have just walked around to defend his people. I shudder to even think. You don't even want to play this scenario out in your mind. But the New York Times wants to lecture the country about Sarah Palin and her role, which is non-existent, in Gabby Giffords. These people are insane. They have lost it. They are no longer connected to any objective reality of what is happening in this country. And they have no ethics. There's something deeply disturbing. There's a lack of human connection from these writers. Do they stop to think a bit about the families of those congressmen and others who were there, congressional aides, lobbyists? They were almost all murdered yesterday. Some of them are going to live with that trauma, by the way, which psychological trauma, is, as many of you know, is a wound that can linger for years, for decades. And it is very real. It affects your health. They will be dealing with that for who knows how long. But the New York Times wants to write about how we should think about Sarah Palin's non-existent role. They said that there was a direct link. They've now retracted it because it was so bogus. But this just shows you where their minds are. The tribalism has rotted out the basic decency in their brains that applies to those who disagree with them. It's just gone now. It's been numbed away somehow. Yesterday, I didn't want to push too far. I didn't want to try to get more attention for my show or what I'm saying by overstating. So I was walking the line between, yes, it's the shooter's fault, but there are also other political implications here. But what I've seen since then is that no, actually, we can't sit around and say to ourselves that moderate discourse will return and that we should cool our passions here and have a moment of unity, because the left is a real problem. They are dehumanizing the Republican Party, Donald Trump. They are seeing themselves as not just the guardians of a better future, but they view it as necessary to take action, even violent action, not quite as violent as what happened yesterday, but attacking people, punching people, breaking things, because of how terrible it would be for Trump's agenda to come to fruition. Because there's no longer, as they see it, any common ground to be had. This is all or nothing. It's zero sum. That shooter yesterday is responsible. There are far too many people that are feeding the sentiments in this country right now that he decided to radicalize upon, and that, yes, he took the action, yes, he made the decision, but that doesn't mean we aren't allowed to call out not just the reckless discourse of the left, but the disregard of common decency and humanity that is now a reality. Whenever we're talking about New York Times, Washington Post, these left-wing outlets, they view Republicans as almost subhuman, as monsters. Trump to them is a monster, and those who support him are monstrous. That has consequences, everybody. Ideology has consequences. Thoughts have implications and lead to actions. The Democrat Party and the left need to be held accountable for theirs. John in Ohio on WWVA. What's going on, John?
How you doing, Buck? I have a couple more examples for you if you want to talk about these accusations and incitements.
Sure.
You mentioned the largest newspapers in the country, and in large part I agree with you on that, and I would like to mention a couple examples on the other side as well.
Okay.
The most popular talk radio show host in the country recently said that it was a campaign position of the Democratic Party the cops deserve to die. That's an accusation as well, and a pretty nasty one.
I'm sorry, who said this?
Horseman Buck.
What did he say? He said it's a position of the Democratic Party that cops deserve to die?
Yeah, in fact, that was the phrase, the cops deserve to die. He said it was the campaign position of the Democratic Party. That was a few months back.
Well, I don't know if he said that or not, and there are elements of the Democratic Party that, by the way, do excuse violence against police officers. So, but that's also not an incitement to violence. You understand that's not an incitement to violence. You understand that's different. That's calling out others for inciting violence. You can understand that. You can understand that these are different things, right? Me saying that jihadists saying that Israelis and Americans and their allies need to be killed, that they're evil and bad. I'm not inciting violence. I'm pointing out those who are inciting violence, right? So if Russia's saying that that's part of the Democratic Party's platform, he's saying that they are inciting. That his statement is not in fact an incitement to anything. It is merely pointing out what is going on. And by the way, I'm not conceding that he said that. I don't know that he said that. So you're coming at me with a quote from somebody else. I don't listen to other people's radio shows.
You're welcome to look it up, and I have another one. In fact, I can name a half dozen.
No, but you understand, I'm only responsible for what I say, right? So I'm not going to sit here and have somebody. I'm not going to sit here and have somebody on the show who's throwing random quotes that he says are attributed to people, and I get to play defense for other people. I don't know what the context is. I don't know what they're saying. So you either have a comment that you would like to make to me, or actually we can just turn this around. Why do you like to play the whataboutism right now? Does it make you feel better to think that both sides are equally rotten? Is that what this is? That's the game that you want to play? Explain to me where this comes from in your mind. I'd really like to know. Republicans are just as bad as Democrats. You believe that? Are the Republican mobs running around dressed all in black, beating people up on campuses? Are the Republicans going around in large numbers saying that what do they want, dead cops? When do they want them now? Are the Republicans running around saying that did they ever run around and say that the previous president of the United States was guilty of high treason against his country? And when I say people, I'm talking about the main editorial rules. So
are you going to let me have a point? Are you going to let me have a point? Yes or no? Barack Obama was accused by your side of being the Antichrist.
What does my side mean? I'm giving you the primary journals of news and opinion in the country, the New York Times, Washington Post. I'm giving you the biggest cable news channels except for Fox News, and you're pulling out random quotes from people somewhere saying, well, what about this guy who said this? I'm talking about a continuous campaign of coverage. But that's not even... Why does it make you feel better? I mean, I think this is a fascinating situation. Why does it make you feel better to think that Democrats aren't actually creating a deeply hostile environment? Do you think that you'll make the problem better by saying that both sides do this, that everybody does this?
Some of them are, and some Republicans are as well.
No, it's not equivalent. No. See, this is the game that the left also plays with terrorism. Oh, there's right-wing terrorism too. That's a lie.
Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols killed hundreds of people.
Oh my God. Do you really want to go here and have a debate over terrorism? I worked in terrorism units, sir. Guess what? We were dealing with jihadists. We weren't dealing with guys that were saying they wanted to overthrow the government.
Sexton is a coward. He won't even let me get 3 words in.
You're getting in tons of words.
It happened on your
No,
side.
I think this is fascinating because your mentality is exactly the problem. You have dead, or rather, you have people that have been shot, and within 24 hours, what did you think of the New York Times editorial talking about Gabby Giffords being shot as a result of Sarah Palin? Do you agree with that sentiment?
I think that one's a stretch.
That's a stretch. Oh, I'm glad, because I think that she's going to sue them for libel. But I just don't know why this makes you feel better, though.
I'll bet you right now. I'll bet you $1,000 right now to the charity of Winners' Choice that Sarah Palin will not sue them for libel. What if she does, you'll lose.
Well, that's irrelevant. I'm just saying that the point is that what was said was false. Oh, by the way, they retracted it, so it was false. There's no debate about this. The New York Times, we shouldn't have said that. So you're not defending that. No one's defending that. That would be idiotic because it's clearly wrong.
In my opinion, that one's a stretch. Not impossible, but it's
it's your contention that right now the political climate has not been made more toxic than, say, 4 years ago. You don't think that's the case?
Yeah, I think it's worse. I think it was getting worse 4 years ago than it was 4 years prior to that. I think it's always getting worse.
Well, it may be cyclical, but so then why is it wrong to take a moment in time and stop and say, hold on a second, what the Democrats have been saying and what the main outlets of the Democratic Party have been putting forward about this president and those who support him is damaging. It's not just a disagreement.
There's nothing wrong with calling that out as a potential factor, but you should have the courage to acknowledge how often it happens on your side as well.
No, see, you're drawing a false. See, this is where we have a problem. You're drawing a false equivalency. It's not the same thing. I mean, you also were willing to say this about terrorism. So clearly, you have a problem with looking at matters of degree, right? I mean, you look at terrorist acts, both averted as well as terrorist acts in terms of total casualties over the last 20 years. It's not even close. But anyway, I'm giving you too much time as it is on my show. Let's go on to the next caller, Joe in San.